The Tzemach Tzedek on Sif Yud Gimel, which quite a long Tzemach Tzedek, starts on page 38 in your booklet, and finishes on page 450 of your book. It's 12 pages. I'm not going to go through the whole thing now. Is based on the quote. There's also the Kolel from Alter, but it's based on the four-way machlokes regarding if somebody sees Aleph Nissen, Chaf Nissen, Aleph Ir, are you choshesh to test Ir or not? The lashon of the Tur is. There's four main shittas. One shitta is the Beis Yosef, there's the Shach, there's the Ramah and the Taz, and there's the Bach. The lashon of the Tur is that if it's the name of the Ramban, if she sees Rosh Chodesh Nisan, she's obviously Chodesh Rosh Chodesh Ir. If she sees Rosh Chodesh Ir, she's Chodesh Rosh Chodesh Sivan, right? And if she did not see Rosh Chodesh Sivan, but she saw Rosh Chodesh Nisan and Rosh Chodesh Ir, so she's Chodesh to Beis Sivan, right? That's Vesa Chodesh. Then talking about Vesa Floga, the Tur says she sees Aleph Nisan, Chav Nisan, and she's Chodesh to Aleph Ir because of Vesa Chodesh. And if she did not see an Aleph Ir, only if she did not see an Aleph Ir, Im Lo Rasa, then she's Chodesh to Tes Ir, because that is the 20-day Hafloga from Chav Nisan. And whether she saw in test, whether she didn't see in test, she's still choshesh to chaf ir mitzad chodesh. That's the lashon of the Tur. Right away, the Beis Yosef right away is medayik from the Tur. The Tur says v'im lo yirasa on Aleph Ir. What happens if she taka dasi on Aleph Ir? So she doesn't have to be choshesh to test ir. That's why he's medayik from the Tur. Why is that? He says maybe she will see on the 20th. On the hafloga of 20 from Chaf. So therefore, why are we not choshesh for Tes Ir if she sees on Aleph Ir? So he says, it being that the first three was on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So now, if she sees on Aleph Ir, what we're going to say, the Ikar Ir is on the Aleph. And then there's extra what they saw on Chaf as Damim Yisraelim. It's not the Iker one. So we're not choshesh to so much the second Re'iyah. We say it's Mikrahu, Damim Yisraelim Hu De Toisfubo. That's his lashon. According to the Beis Yosef, it seems like we're not choshesh for it at all. But if she does not see an Aleph Ir, then it's a raya that Chaf Nisan is not stam, but we have to be choshesh. That means if, according to the aside of the Beis Yosef is, if you have, let's to put it into context, the reason we're choshesh to a vesus is because we want to know if a vesus kavua is going to turn out of this. So if she sees Aleph Nisan, then she sees Chaf Nisan, then she sees Aleph Ir, so we say the Iker is the Aleph and Aleph, the Rosh Chodesh. So we have to be choshesh only for that one. There's other things, the Mikrahu, Damim Yisraelim, there was something happened, and we're not choshesh to it. Bechlat, anything which comes from the Chaf. The Chaf becomes a Damim Yisraelim. It's not part of the calculation of what we're going to look for a vesus. Because the idea behind the vesus, behind the chashashes of vesus sheni kavua, is because we want to know what's going to become a vesus kavua. So comes after she sees Rosh Chodesh Ir, the only thing she's going to be choshesh for is Aleph Sivan. Doesn't have to be choshesh to test, doesn't have to be choshesh to chaf. Yeah, the Darkei Moshe right away disagrees with him. That's the Ramah. And he says that what the Tur says, im rasa, im lo rasa, Rosh Chodesh Ir, it's a chiddush. That not only do you have to, even though she sees a Re'iyah of Chaf, and she's choshesh to test Shiur because it's 20 days. He says, even though you were oiker the chashash verses of Rosh Chodesh, you still have to be choshesh to the afloga, and you have to be choshesh clearly to both. That's the Ramon that question. We'll get to it soon. Let's go now. Just move for a second to the shach. The das of the shach in Sa'if Katan Lamed Aleph is that if she sees on Aleph Ear, she's completely not choshesh to tes Ear. What are we choshesh to? We're choshesh to Yud Beis, because that is the from Chaf to Aleph. Chaf Nisan to Aleph Ear is first and last is 12 days. So we're choshesh to a short hafloga of 12. That's it, because that we're choshesh to that. That's the only chashash we're choshesh mitzad haflogas, because there was a long hafloga Aleph to Chaf. Then we got a shorter hafloga Chaf to Aleph. That's 12 days. So we're only choshesh for mitzad hafloga. We're only choshesh for that one. But you still have the Vesas HaChodesh that you have to be choshesh to. That doesn't fall apart. That Vesas HaChodesh still stays, and you have to be choshesh for Chaf Ear. According to the Shach, Vesas, because we know the Vesas She'ena Kavua gets cancelled with one time. Shach Lav Davke holds that position. It means it's mashma from the Shach that Hafloga Ktsara is Oiker, Hafloga Aruka that was before it. That means the Shitta of the Shach seems to be quite clear that if you have a shorter Hafloga that comes after a long Hafloga, being that she changed the Haflogas, it's no longer the Chashash of Vesas Hafloga only applies to, if there's no Kavua, the Chashash only applies to the Shinui of the Vesas. It only applies to the new Hafloga, even if it's a shorter Hafloga. That is the Shitta of Shach. Therefore, only going to be choshesh for Yud Beis. You're not going to be choshesh for Tes Bichlal, because she became to a shorter Hafloga. Elam, but still, why are you choshesh for Chaf Ear? Because the Hafloga of Chodesh was not the day of the Chodesh was not nekar yet. That's not, you can't be oiker a Chodesh by having a date earlier. Only Hafloga you could be oiker with a shorter Hafloga afterwards. The Ramah and the Taz are the most extreme in their position, that you choshesh to tes. If even she sees an Aleph Ear, you still choshesh to tes Ear. Why? Because that wasn't nekar yet. She still saw on Aleph Ear. So why are we choshesh for counting our Hafloga from the previous one when there was bleeding already in the middle? So this, first of all, a short Hafloga is not oiker. The longer Hafloga. It's the first point. So if you have a short Hafloga after a long Hafloga, you still have to keep the long Hafloga on the calendar. But which makes sense. But they add, in addition to that, the fact that a new bleeding came in middle does not cancel the concept of a longer Hafloga. So what happens is you suddenly have to be choshesh for more dates until it settles on a Vesas Kavua. Not only that, yeah. The way that Alter Rebbe understands him is a choshesh for the Taz, a choshesh for Yud Beis also. You have to be choshesh for Yud Tes because that's 20 from the previous one. You have to be choshesh for Yud Beis because that's the shorter one. Yeah, so that's so now. And the Bach takes we'll call it a middle ground approach. That yes, a short Hafloga is not oiker a long Hafloga, but at the same time, if a new bleeding comes in the middle, it resets the clock, and you don't count from the bleeding that happened before this one. So if she sees on Chaf, then she sees on Aleph, Take, we still have to be choshesh to Haflogas Chaf, and we still have to be choshesh now to Haflogas Yud Beis. But we start counting them from Aleph. We don't count from what happened from what happened before then.
This is the Bach?
Yeah.
That was only the man, not the people.
That's the understanding of the Bach. The Maskone, the Bach Paskins lahalocha, like the Shach. We're not choshesh for all. We're not choshesh for all these things. Yeah, it's not choshesh to Tessier, because that shows that the flogging was changed, and then she is choshesh for Yud Beis, and she is choshesh to Chaf. I can't hear you. What?
She saw that she did not see her test ended days. According to the time you also needs to have fluggage.
The Chaf wasn't necker yet. Chaf wasn't necker yet, right?
It wasn't that guy. You said the short one.
No, the Shach says a short one. The Taz says a short one is not like a longer one. Yeah, so that's exactly what the Tzemach Tzedek is coming to discuss. What is the nafkaminas between these shittas when it comes to kriyas and when it comes to akiras veses? So the way that the Tzemach Tzedek begins by obviously he's bringing the shitta of the Taz, and first he starts by explaining the Taz, and then he goes into explaining the Shach. He brings first the Taz and the nafkaminas and Taz and the Shach, and then he goes into the shit of the Shach and brings the raya why the shit of the Shach is the correct shit. Then he goes into the whole discussion in the words of the Ramban. The way the Tzemach Tzedek looks at it is as follows. He says, if she's going to see now she saw an Aleph, right? Yeah, but she saw Aleph, Chaf, Aleph. So according to the Taz, you have to be choshesh to test because of our flog of 20. Right? So Lu Yitzur, she saw Aleph Nissen, Chaf Nissen. Forget about Aleph Ir for a second. And then she saw Tes Ir, according to the Taz, and she saw Aleph Ir also, yeah, but she saw Tes Ir also. So now we have two aflogis of 20. We have a shorter one, we have a different one, but we have two aflogis of 20. Aleph to Chaf, Chaf to Tes. There's Aleph in the middle, the Aleph Ir. The Taz doesn't change anything for the Taz. If she's going to see now again 20 days after Tes, she's going to have three aflogis, and she's kaveya versus afloga for 20. That's according to the Taz. Which means even though there was a re'iyah in the middle, according to the Taz, she's going to be kaveya versus afloga. So it comes out that according to the Taz, she gets a versus kavua, and she cancels all the other chashashas that she has now. Now she only has a versus kavua for 20. According to the Shach, though this is not shaykh to be kaveya, because the moment she saw Aleph, that was already oiker completely the previous haflaga of 20. She only has a new haflaga of 12. So even if she sees afterwards, everything gets reset. And according to the Bach, it's going to be, according to the Bach, we have to see what's going to happen further. So it comes out that according to the Shach, Taka looks like there's a kula that you don't have to be choshesh to test. But if it's going to end up being three sets of aflogas, you're going to have a much bigger chumrah, because you're going to be continuously choshesh. You're not going to be able to be kaveya veses for much longer. According to the Taz, a short afloga doesn't affect the previous ones. You can be kaveya veses much faster. Even if you have a short hafloga in the middle, if you have long hafloga of 20, long hafloga of 20, long hafloga of 20, 20 days, even if in the middle there was another year, that according to the Shach would have been a problem, according to the Taz, that would become a veses kavua. Now, we know, and we see in other places, that when it comes to Hilchos Nida, we try to be machmer like both shittas in general. Yeah, when you have the Shulchan Aruch also in other places, especially in Vestas, we're machmer according to two shittas. It's a machzedek says tzorich iyun to be machmer like both shittas. Can you imagine to be machmer like both shittas means to be choishesh to a kavua of 20, like the Taz, and to be choishesh to all the eine kavuas, according to the Shach. He says that's tzorich iyun. You can't say that you have to be lemaisa to be machmer like both.
How does that change when we know the halacha, the Alter Rebbe just makes the actual Lashon Ramban, which is not like any of these?
That goes later. The Ramban, that's the Alter Rebbe comes and says that everybody, when we scored it, nobody had the Lashon of the Ramban, and b'meila, it all gets put aside, and that's what the Tzemach Tzedek goes 3 pages later, and he goes through. But not, right now we're before the Alter Rebbe. Yeah, if you want to go with the Alter Rebbe, the Lashon of the Alter Rebbe, the discussion of the Alter Rebbe starts on page 43, page Reish Mem Beis of the Piskei Dinim. Over there, Tzemach Tzedek starts discussing. Well, he starts earlier already discussing the Lashon of the Ramban. He quotes the Ramban, and then he discusses it. He brings the Lashon of the Alter Rebbe that nobody else, that nobody saw the Shach and the Taz and the Bach and the Tur. Nobody saw the Lashon of the Ramban, and b'meila they, so to speak, misunderstood. They made their decisions based on a mistaken reading of, or mistaken, on an unknown. They didn't know what the Ramban actually wrote. So now, the Tzemach Tzedek goes and explains as follows. He says, according to the Shach, yeah, Lu Yitzurit, we're going to go to, according to, let's take the Shach for a second. Let's go, Lu Yitzurit, we're going to take the Beis Yosef's Kav. That when you have a Vesus, and then you have another Vesus, a shorter one, a longer one, we say that there's a Domim Yiseidim, and we only look at the Iker one. So it could be that the person is going to be Kiveya a Haflaga way before they're going to be Kiveya Vesus HaChodesh. What's the scenario? If they see Aleph Nisan, Tezayin Nisan, Aleph Iyar, Tezayin Iyar, so you have 16 Haflagas between them, you have a Vesus Kavua. L'chayra, you would be able to have a Vesus Kavua later, right? Because you have Aleph Tezayin, Aleph Tezayin. There's no Vesus HaChodesh Nikva because the next Aleph didn't come. We don't have 3 dates of the same month yet, but we do have three repetitive aflogas. That's what you would think like that, yeah? Seemingly, according to Beis Yosef Lav Dafka, we would have to be choishesh because we have to look at the date. Maybe the secondary one is only Domim Yiseidim. How would we know if it's Domim Yiseidim or not? If comes a Chodesh Siv and then she sees, then we know that it's that the Iker is a Chodesh, is Kivei Avos Chodesh, and the Tezayins are Yiseidim. If she sees on Beis Sivan, we know that it's not a Chodesh. Rather, it's Haflogas, because now it's the first time that came from, because Ir is a Chassid. So when will it be 16 days from Tezayin Ir? Would be Beis Sivan. Right? And if she does not see on either of them, so the Chayra, according to the Beis Yosef, what are you going to be choishesh to? Neither. Because we don't have anything kavua yet. According to the other shittas, we would be. We already have a Vesus kavua that was already established. According to Beis Yosef, we say it's Dam Yiseidim, Lav Dafki B'chal have a Vesus kavua over here of any sort. You don't have any chashashas either. Because the chashash of, because if you want to say, because if we know there's mitzad Dam Yiseidim, we prove that it's already, we don't know yet which Vesus was nikba. We still don't have a kavod the kaveses, but Lu Yitzur, we're going to go down. That kav is going to be, it could be a Vesus, we would think there's a Vesus kavua, Aleph Tezayin, Aleph Tezayin. Right, so that's, if we're going to go based on the Shach, and we're not going to look at the Dam Yisraelim, we're going to have a Vesas Kavua before we even have a Vesas HaChodesh. That's the first point that he brings. Now, what happens if she sees Rosh Chodesh, yeah? But not Rosh Chodesh, she's three Rosh Chodeshes. The first two are Mole. Yeah, you can only have it the Cheshvan Kist. Yeah, that you have moles in a row. The only 2 months that you can have Tishrei Cheshvan, you can have those months you can have moles in a row. There's only the first 3 months of the year. Huh? Oh yeah, 4 moles. Elul is always a chassan. Tishrei is always a mole. Cheshvan can be mole. Tevis is always a chassan. So the most you could have is 3 moles in a row. So Liyitzur, you have 3 Rosh Chodeshes. The first 2 are mole. The third one is chassan, right? So you have between the first Rosh Chodesh and the second Rosh Chodesh is a flog of 32. No, why do we say 32? Because we count the first and last when it comes to a flog. So you have 32 days. And then when she sees in the third month, which is 31, then comes the next month is a chassid, again sees on the Chodesh. We still have to be choshesh the 4th month. Maybe there was a haflage. Right? Why is that? Because we don't know yet if we have a kavua. According to the Beis Yosef, we have to chashash. Maybe those Dam Yisraelim. We don't know what's going on over here, so we have to be choshesh. According to the Taz, being that there's already 3 Rosh Chodeshes, there's nothing else to be choshesh to. You're already kiveya to a Vesas HaChodesh. You don't have to be choshesh to the aflogis of 31 anymore. According to the Beis Yosef, you would have to be choshesh to the Vesas of 31 the next month, because she saw 32, 31, or 31, 31, 30, whichever way you want to calculate the days. And then, so if it's 3 Rosh Chodesh, that's fine. According to Beis Yosef, we have to check. Maybe it's Dam Yisraelim, we have to wait. Maybe the next month is going to be Keveya. It's not to be Choshesh for the Haflag of 31, from the previous Haflag of 31, which wasn't Kavua yet. Because we don't know yet if it's a Chodesh or if it's a Haflag. When we have them two coming together, according to the Beis Yosef, if you take the Shach goes in the same Kav, then you have to make sure to determine whether the main one is a Chodesh, the Taz, which does not look at the concept of Damim Yisraelim, only then you can be Kiveya Vesas much faster. So it comes out that according to the Taz, you have scenarios where the Vesas Kavua, it's much easier to be Kiveya to the finish line.
I don't know how you have done the same. Jewish Chodesh, yeah, there was no other dam besides the Jewish Chodesh. Which dam you say?
Not the actual dam you say.
No, but even if let's say it's a flood of 31 days, it's still not going to be done the same.
Yeah, but to say when we have Haflagas and Chodesh coming together, we look at them. The logic of the Beis Yosef is that we have to see which one is going to be the dominating factor. Yeah, so he uses the Dam Yisraelim as an explanation. But you have to see which one is the dominating factor. So you can't be Kiveya until you cancel whichever one, until you know which one is the dominating factor. According to the Taz, we don't have that tug of war between the two vestas. Whichever one comes first. And Sholom Yisrael. Then he says, according to the Ramban, you might be able to say that when are you choshesh to a vesas, once of them becomes kavua. Maybe according to the Ramban, the way they understand it is that if you have either one that comes first, whether a Veses Chodesh comes first, Kavua of Chodesh comes first, a Kavua of Flog comes first, you're not Chodesh anymore to anything else. Or maybe differently, that after your Oiker of Veses, even if you're not Keveya a new one, we don't have to be Chodesh even, so therefore there could be a scenario that Haflogus will be Nekar before your Keveya a new Veses Chodesh. For example, if they see Aleph Nisan, Chav Nisan, Aleph Ir, which is the case we're talking about, according to the Shach, you're not Choshesh anymore for Tesir. Even though you don't have yet the Kavua of Chodesh, you still don't have to be Choshesh. You still oiker this one-time Veses of 20. Because it passed with a shorter flogger. If she's not going to see on the Chodesh Sivan, she saw a Chodesh Nisan, the Chodesh Ir. She did not see the Chodesh Sivan. She saw Aleph, Chaf, Aleph, and then if comes again the next Aleph, according to the Shach, you're not going to be, that will be Nekar completely. Nekar is not counted. It's not counted anymore. Huh? Because she has Chaf. Nekar from the Chashash was Nekar. The one time the Chashash of Aleph was Nekar. If she saw Aleph, Chaf, Aleph, and then she did not see Aleph, if she saw Aleph, Chaf, Aleph, if she does not see Rosh Chodesh Sivan, she does not see Aleph Sivan, she doesn't have to be Choshesh for Aleph Tammuz. It's completely cancelled. If she, for example, if she saw Beis Sivan Lamashal, she doesn't have to be Choshesh to Rosh Chodesh Tammuz because she didn't see Aleph Sivan. There's no Kviyas of Chodesh. But we have two Aflogas of 31. But that also wasn't Nikba because you don't have 4 yet. According to the Taz, you don't have 4 yet. You don't have 3 sets of 31 yet. You have only 2 sets of 31. According to the Shach, 2 sets. If you're excluding the Chaf, you only have 1 set. If not, you have. But you still have. But if you're excluding it, you only have 1, and then according to the Shach, you only have 1 chashash of. You only have to be choshesh for 1 more. Yeah. Now, then the Tzemach Tzedek moves and says, "But the Shach Bichlal doesn't pass like Ramah." And he says, "The Divrei Shach makes sense." And an interesting raya he brings. First, he explains. He says, if she would see Chaf in regular aflog, she'll see Chaf, then Yud. You see Chaf Nisan, Chaf Ir. Chaf is 20 days, 10 days. Forget not the dates of the month. She's a flog of 20, a flog of 20, a flog of 10. And then she sees another haflaga of 20. We would be able to say it could be kaveya veses. Why? We're going to say that the haflaga of 10 is shorter. Why should it be mevatel the haflagas of before? She saw a flog of 20, a flog of 20. Then she saw a shorter haflaga.
The last 20, is that 20 from her previous year? Or
no, the new 20. Chaf, Yud, Chaf.
That last Chaf, is that 20 from the previous year or 20 from the day that it should have been?
She saw, so 20, it's two aflogas of 20. So if she would see a third aflog of 20, it should be keveya, but she didn't. She saw the third afloga was of 10. And then she sees another 2 aflogas of 20. 2 aflogas of 20. Then we 2, 2, 10, 2, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2. 20, 21, 20, 20, 20, 10, 20, 20. So over there we would say she's kevas veses. Why is that? Because you see, the shorter vessels is not oiker. The shorter vessels is not going to be oiker longer. It was a fluke in the system. We can't say, and we could say this for sure. Dummy, we say, right? But if she sees Aleph Nissen, Chaf Nissen, Aleph Ir, and we don't, it's not 20, 20, 10, 20, 20, but rather you have 20 and then 10, then really it's 12 really. It's 20 and then to 20 and then the next, and then the shorter one. According to the logic, you can't be kaveh two vestas. You have to know which one is the ikr one. We're not going, we have to wait and see where it's completely accurate. If it was 20, 20, 10, 20, 20, then we know clearly that it's only based on vestas and we're kaveh it. We don't have to wait any longer. We know for sure it's nothing to do with chaydish, it's nothing to do with vestas. And we use the logic of Damim Yisaidim to say that 20, the 10 in the middle is a Damim Yisaidim. The same logic we used then, but it didn't mess up the concept that the vessels is based on the flogus.
It's time we say that the next year is 30 from the first one.
No, according to the Shach, we don't. It's according to the Shach, we don't count from the previous one. All we say is, because we say the 10 in the middle was a fluke, and we see that her real vessels is 2020.
She saw it 10 days later and then again 10 days later?
No, she saw it 20 days after the 10.
So if the 10 is Damim Yisaidim, well, which happened 10 days earlier, then 20 days later she sees, that means it's 30 days from the second day.
You're right. Maybe it was 20, 20, 10, 10, 20. That'll make more sense like that.
Well, that's if you say that you count from the previous.
If you say count from the previous, if you say it's Damim Yisaidim, means you count from the previous one.
Even the start of Damim Yisaidim is 2 weeks.
It could be one way or the other, yeah.
20 from that Asavita, it's still considered
Right.
20. Not
It could be, I'm saying, it could be the way he explains it also. It could be whichever, the way I understood it is 20, 20, 10, 20, 20.
This is according to Taz, even according to Taz.
It doesn't you don't have to go so far.
Especially if you understand the.
According to the Taz, you're going to get too much closer to that. Huh?
Especially if you think of like the blood building up, it doesn't
Yeah.
make sense to say that 30, which is really 20 from the previous year.
No, it's the blood build up faster, and 10 for whatever reason. There was a fluke in the system.
No, the point is that after the 10, to get to the next 20, it's not 30, it's 20.
It's 20. Yeah.
What he's saying is that it would actually be 30 from the previous.
It would be 30 from the previous one if you count it as Damim Yisaidim. Because then you attach it to the previous one. If you want to look at it at that point. Or you could say,
Shach says it's Damim Yisaidim for plugs.
Shach does not say Damim Yisaidim for flogs.
In this case, there's zero. Right?
So Chassidek says that in this scenario, he would take that approach. Masha'en Kain, in the scenario of Rosh Chodesh of Aleph Chaf Aleph, and that case he would not take that approach. That's the difference between the two. He says that the ear of Rosh Chodesh ear is strong enough, alima, strong, lavat lachashash. Mishum shibov al yoda imanav shachnis traverses shel chaf yom dekan shel asa bezriyas. And then you have to be choshesh to see which one is going to be the stronger one. For sure, one of them is the ikar one. We have to see which one is the kavua. Is it chodesh or haflagas? If we say the chodesh is ikar, the vessels are chodesh is ikar, the chodesh, then the chaf is completely. Then the haflaga of chaf is completely cancelled. Right. So if we say that the chodesh one is ikar, then Tessus anyways falls off. Why? Because you don't need the ikar is a chodesh. The haflaga of 20 doesn't count anymore. And if you say that haflaga is the main thing, then you anyways don't have to follow test because we have a shorter haflaga that came after a longer haflaga, so you only have to follow the base. 12, the 12 the shorter haflaga, not the longer haflaga. And then the Tzemach Tzedek brings an interesting raya for the shach. Huh? But only choshesh for the 12. If the ikar is haflaga, it's only be choshesh for the haflaga of 12. That's a newer haflaga according to the shach. It was ikar the previous, the longer haflaga. Yeah. Then the Tzemach Tzedek brings a very interesting raya for the shach. And he says over there, in verses adilug, which we learned a few seifim ago, it says that if a woman sees Tezvav, Tezayin, Yud according to the Ramban, she's not Choshesh for Yudches yet. Why? Because Vesas Adilug, you also need four. You need four. That's a machlokes. You need four dates to. You need 4 dates to get it. You only Choshesh to Yud Zayin because that's the date of the previous month. According to the Ramah, if we say that according to the Ramah, the Chayra, she should be Choshesh to Yudches. Why is that? Because from Tezvav Nisan to Tezayin Iyar is 32. From Tezayin Iyar to Yudzayin Sivan is 31. From Yudzayin Sivan to Yudches Tammuz is 32. So the 31, according to the Ramah, that the smaller one does not cancel a bigger one. Yeah, hot cup. The smaller one does not cancel a bigger one. So when she had 32, then she had 31, she still has to be Choshesh to the 32. So she would have to be Choshesh to Yudches Tammuz. But the Ramah doesn't pass like that. There's a problem. Again, you have from Tezvav, Nisan, to Tezayin Iyar, is a one. Nisan is a Mali. You have a 32 aflog. From Tezayin Iyar to Yud Zayin Sivan, Iyar is a Chasa. You have only 31. Right? So now we have to show, are we Choshesh for Yud Zayin Tammuz? According to the Ramah, the Chayra, if you're going to follow that logic that a smaller aflaga is oiker, is not oiker, the bigger aflaga, and you still have to be Choshesh for the bigger aflaga, like we saw over here, you're still Choshesh for Tes. So then you should be Choshesh also for Yudches, because Yudches is the 32 point.
It only keeps on the calendar, you're not Choshesh for it again next month.
You have to be Choshesh once, but according to the Ramban, you don't have to be Choshesh for Yudches Bechlal. So if it will be according to the understanding of the Ramah, that according to the Ramban you have to be Choshesh for Tes also, the way the Ramah understands it, then why in Vesas Adilug the Ramah says you don't have to? The Ramban says you don't have to be Choshesh to Yudches. According to that logic, the shorter afloga, if you have a shorter afloga, you still have to be Choshesh to a longer afloga. You should have a chashash of 32. You should be Choshesh on Yudches, and the Ramban doesn't say you have to be Choshesh. It says only a Choshesh on Yudzayin.
Not take a Choshesh for a bigger plug. It stays in the calendar for the previous time.
Over here it also, that's the Shaila. Before you get to Yudzayin to Yudches Tammuz, the Ramban says you're not Choshesh to Yudzayin Tammuz. You're not Choshesh to Yudches Tammuz. Not Choshesh, only Choshesh to Yudzayin. Why? Because the Dilug wasn't Nikva. Wasn't Nikva the Dilug. So the Shaila is, why are you not Choshesh? According to the logic that a longer afloga has to be, a longer afloga stays in the calendar, then when it comes Tammuz, you have to be Choshesh for Yudzayin because of a Chodesh. But you also have to be Choshesh for, or maybe even because of a afloga, because you have a shorter afloga, you have to be Choshesh for that also. But you have to be Choshesh for Yudches also, because that's the 32 afloga, which was not Nekar yet. It was not Nekar.
Why? It was
When?
on the 32nd day. She didn't sit down, she saw the 31st.
When? The previous month?
Yeah.
But the lower afloga doesn't cancel all of it.
I know, but it passed without seeing blood. That goes into the whole discussion whether when you see blood one day afterwards, is that considered? That's what Tzemach Tzedek answers. Tzemach Tzedek says no, could be taka because only one.
Besides the fact that also her afloga for 32 wasn't kabula.
Never said because you have to be choshesh for it. So he says that's a raya for the shach. So then Tzemach Tzedek says no. Even according to the Ramah, we can understand it. Why? Like you said, she sees the logic is she sees a day later. When it went to one day afterwards, will still be considered like it's a dam miselim, it's a hamshich, and then it's not a miselim. She didn't see and weiter gefahren.
She has a regular vessel 32. Regular vessel for 32. She has a regular vessel for 32.
We're not choshesh to vessel of 32. That's one svara, and the second svara is vessel dilug. Since we're discussing a vessel dilug in Gemara, one of the shittas, the shitta of Shmuel is that that for vessel dilug you don't need, you need 4 times. But for dilug, only 3 times.
The case of the Ramaz Adil.
Talking about the Ramah then, in previous, it's talking about Diluk. This is Ramban is Diluk. So you're Mitzarev, the Svara, so according to some in the Gemara, there is a shita that it's for Diluk, you could be Kiveya in 3. So therefore, when you Mitzarev this together with Mitzarev these 2, so it would make sense, even according to the Ramban, that you're not going to have to be Choshesh for Yutches when the Shinui of the Haflaga was to make it a little bit shorter. Then the Machzida goes into long, bringing the words of the Ramban, bringing the words of the Gemara, and then he goes into what the Tzemach Tzedek, into what the Alter Rebbe says. The Alter Rebbe in Sifkat and Gimel brings the Iker Shittas. Yeah. The Alter Rebbe in Sifkat and Gimel brings first this. It's really divided into 2 parts. You have first a summary of the shittas, and then Alter Rebbe starts with as das Ramban b'Chosef. Huh? I didn't go. I'm not going to discuss much of that past that. Not enough time.
So what you're saying
I got till now. I'm going to the Alter Rebbe. So the Alter Rebbe in Sifkat and Gimel starts by summarizing the shittas of first the Rabban Taz, then the Bach and Shach. Yeah, he says he brings the different shittas, and then he says like it's be'emes das Ramban shalei kedivase v'lei kedivase. Be'emes the Ramban doesn't hold not like the way that Ramban Taz understand him, not like nobody, whichever way they quote him is not right. Why? Because, according to the Ramban, if she sees clear that if she sees an aleph here, she's not choishesh and tes. But means if she sees aleph chaf aleph, she's not choishesh and tes. But she is choishesh on chaf. Why is that? Because if even though you're not oiker the haflaga of chaf, because she saw a shorter haflaga, first nekuda is a shorter haflaga is not oiker a longer one. Not oiker a longer one, but it resets the clock. So that means that you had aleph, chaf, aleph, so you had a flog of 20, then a flog of 12. So now, after comes aleph ear, what are you choishesh to? You have to be choishesh to the shorter flogger, or you have to be choishesh to the longer flogger. Yeah? And you have to be choishesh to the long one that was not nekar by the short one, but it reset the clock. So you have to be choishesh for chaf, aleph, from the last time she saw blood. And he adds in parentheses that she would have to be choishesh for chaf, even if that flogis would not work out, even if the dates would be, if there would be still have a chashash of Eses HaChodesh. Even if there's no chashash of Eses HaChodesh, she still has to be choishesh for that mitzad haflogis. That means, for example, if she would see Beis Nissen, Chaf Aleph Nissen, Aleph Ir, she would still be choishesh Chaf Ir. Why? Because from Beis to Chaf Aleph is 20. She still has to be choishesh for the longer one. According to the Ramban, it says it's clear that that the second one, a smaller one, is not oiker the first one, but it resets the clock. And then the Alter says, "B'mei Rama ubach utaz u'shach lo yiboy adan nichas anid l'Ramban etfusim b'neseilu lochen kasvu mashe kasvu." What they wrote over there was based on they didn't see the words of the Ramban. And the Tzemach Tzedek, just although he goes into a very long explanation of what the Alter Rebbe and the Ramban is, I just want to point one small point is when he explains the logic of the Ramban. What's the logic of the Ramban? He says, let me find 1 second. Oh, the Tzemach Tzedek just adds a point to the Alter Rebbe. He says that what we say at the Vesa Flogus is not nekar by the fact that you go and you're mocked and you see it earlier, and you see a shorter afloga. That's not enough to eliminate the chashash. The only way to eliminate such a chashash is if it passes. You understand from the Ramban, it has to pass clean, not that it has to change. It means he just clarifies what the way the Alter Rebbe, what the Ramban says. It's not to be able to be oiker chashash of vesach any kavod. When it comes to afloga, you have to be able to pass it clean, and not that you get an earlier one and it changed it. That is essentially what the Tzemach Tzedek is, and there's a lot more in the Tzemach Tzedek, but it's not enough time for it.